Thank you, Gwen, for warming up the audience for me, and thank you for coming. And thanks, KIKK Festival, for bringing us together. My name is Neko, and I do a lot of different work. And some of that work I do under the name Dr. Formalyst, and that's what I'm here to talk about today. I'm going to start with explaining this, right? So in my home country, there's a saying that goes something like, even a blind hen sometimes pecks the grain. And I think this notion of that, even like depending on dumb, blind luck, eventually we'll get some results. I feel like, for me, it encompasses the whole situation of the generative AI in the creative fields where everybody is a blind hen. So on one side, of course, like we creatives, artists, we feel like a blind hen running from one side to another because every day something new comes out to figure out like, how does it relate to what we do? How do we use it? Will it replace us? I'm also like very interested in what happens to the audience, our audience, with all this delusion of AI. I'm going to talk about it. That's the attention part of the title of my talk. But on this other side, we have also AI companies. They also run around like a blind hen. So they invest billions of dollars of venture capital money without having any really business plan. So they really just kind of like throwing stuff on the wall and see what sticks. And that's business plan for pretty much all of them. And then also like using these generative models. And I'm pretty sure everybody in this room has used 1 or 10 or 100 different types of generative AI. It does feel a little bit like a blind head, like a slot machine. If you just depend on prompting, like unlike other creative tools that we had so far, where we could understand how they work, even like the vintage generative tools by making like art through the code, you do understand the process and you can more or less control the output, unlike just relying, say, on prompts, because all the AI models, diffusion models, language models, they are black boxes. So we don't know what happened inside, so we need to rely on a lot of trial and error, on a bit of dumb luck, and for some that's fine, but I don't like feeling like a slot machine all the time. It is fun to be surprised, but I do like to have my creative process under control. So this is what this is a little teaser of what I'm going to be talking about. And this is really about how you keep creative control using different sorts of AI. And then, so how do you bring, this is why I say, intention into your work, and then eventually, hopefully, with this intention, you'll be able to capture some of the attention of the audience. And I think our audience is shifting rapidly, and I'm going to address that in this talk too. So to just get started, let me introduce myself. So at the base, I'm a designer, actually, and this is the team photo of my design studio. So my background is in architecture and coding, but as pretty much as any of you who's been freelancing, I've been doing everything over the 25 years. So, and I'm not going to show that. So I'm going to be doing like hundreds of website design, development, also user experience, branding, visual identity, logos. I'm not going to show the work because it doesn't really relate so much to what I'm going to talk today, but I'm going to show a couple of hobbies, right? So first of the hobbies was architecture for me. It's a beautiful hobby, horrible profession, so I always kept it as a side project. And for now, until now, there are two important things that I came out with my architecture experience. So first is, let's just take a look at what's happening here. So this is ceiling and some stuff is like animated on the ceiling. I'm going to explain in a moment. And then in a second, we will see this different kind of effects in the ceiling. So this is a project I've done with my friend and architect, Jose Villar. This is the hospital in Valencia. And so about 12 years ago, we were asked to do some sort of like artistic installation to liven up the mood in some of the parts of the new hospital. And so the first thing that you see, this linear movement and some animations on the ceiling, this is the corridors that are only used to push patients in beds. So basically primary users of that space are people who are being pushed in bed, and they go like this and they just see the ceiling with all the installations and everything. So we actually wanted to intervene there for them, and we put these lenticular prints. These are things that you look from different sides and you get like feeling the animation. And so we made basically this feeling animate as they push the patients down the corridors. They see these animated visuals of clouds passing by and birds, and without any, say, high technology. It's just light and lenticulars, and it's not really a big art. What's really important in this kind of work is to show a nice gesture that somebody was thinking into you at this moment, where you're feeling alone in a bed, and you look up there and say, okay, but at least somebody thought about how I'm going to feel in this moment. And this is kind of a little different effect in the waiting rooms with some mirrors, but important, well, curious thing here, because we were selling to the hospital this project as like a new kind of installation for the well-being. They were like, okay, well, we're gonna then do a double-blind study. So during the 9 months they were doing and then published the paper that actually proves that our intervention here did significantly improve the mood of the patients in these parts of the hospital. Or so they tell me. This is 200 pages, I couldn't read, really, I don't understand. But, so one takeaway was that I was very soon, working in architecture, I was more interested in how people, not just designing the space itself, but how people relate and interact with space. And I think that pushed me more and more into design of interaction itself. And also another interesting thing from my architecture experience so this is, I'm going to explain in a moment, while I was still studying, for most of the architecture projects that I would do, once I have a concept and I need to actually do design, start doing design, rather than doing like a physical model, cutting the cardboard, or doing like 3D Max thing and stuff, I started to develop these little tools that were fine-tuned to the idea they have and just helped me realize that idea. So this is one of the examples that I found. This is, I think, year 2000. So I had the idea to make this square in front of the theater. It's a simple architectural concept, but I think interesting the tool that I made to just quickly come up with ideas and iterate in order so I guess very early on I realized that our ideas are often being shaped by the tools that we use. So I guess here I wanted to start making tools that are shaped by my idea, so they don't prove the resistance to the idea. And this is something that always going to be present in my talk, in my work, and it's going to flow into the Dr. Formalyst work, as you will see in a moment. But also, okay, this is just a little bit of work because it's related, and I also get to name drop. So this is like 2003. This is not the retro interface. This is the actual old interface. Just all out of these experiments that I did with making creative tools. So this is the range of prototypes that I designed to develop for Apple retail division, because their managers, not designers, but their managers needed some quick tool that they can sketch the store, the layout of the store, and then put products in. And you can see how old it is by the products they're putting there. So there's one thing that came out of this work, and then this is 10 years later in 2011 when Apple got to build this new Apple Park. At that time it was called Apple II Campus. I get to do this app that basically was helping Apple board keep track of the progress of the construction and whatnot. And of course this is all blurred because of the NDAs. So this is a little bit of work that's related because one of my big hobbies is creating these creative tools. So for example, when VR came out, I was always bothered that architects don't have really good creative tools. So I don't feel like an architect anymore. Architects have good tools to be very productive, like with Revit, but not at this beginning, the conceptual stage of the project. And so, like with VR, I was starting to think like, what would it feel like if you, and this is like really old with the Google Daydream, so it's 2016, 17, you basically create a building around you. So you create a space in which you yourself in, and you can walk around, you can fly with a jetpack. So that was fun, but also like VR headsets were overly cumbersome. So when Apple and Google made this AR technology, then I made this like pocket version when you can just have your phone and anywhere just sketch in space, like you move your phone and you create 3D space, 3D shapes in space, and then you can, this is the actual app. I was like taking video with another phone like this. And you can also expand it and real size and walk around in the space that you made and then make again small like a model. And so this, as you will see also in my Dr. Formalyst work, the emphasis on process is really something that I've been increasingly obsessed about. And that's why also, not surprised that one of my favorite hobbies was teaching. So this is some of the student work actually. I was for about 7, 8 years teaching first and second year students. I was doing an introductory course So I was explaining basics of visual communications and then how to use digital tool, and then I would help them realize some idea in the medium of their choosing. So some of them would be designing apps, others would be, a lot of would be making short films or animated features, 3D, and that was really fun. And as a part of it, this actually led me directly, in a way, into being Dr. Formalyst. Because in order to make the class more immersive, I did a couple of things. First, I made like a web platform so that people, students can use it to communicate with me and collaborate. That was fun. And also, everything that I was teaching, I was applying to the design of the class itself. This was a really nice short movie. So, for example, I did a lot of, this is like a logo that I also designed for class. And I did like this series of small indents before every class with a logo. And it was actually the first time after like maybe 20 years of using 3D tools that I use it just for fun. Because I was using always 3D to make buildings, and it was always like something that I hated to do. So this is the first time I was like, oh, this could be fun. And then when I stopped teaching, because I wanted to make write a book about creativity and everything, and of course I never did it because it's a big project and I'm lazy, I started to procrastinate every time I sit down to write a book. Instead, I would be like making like little stupid 3D videos. And so I started making more of them. And so I created like a separate persona that I called Dr. Formalyst to put all these videos that I started to make. And this is the first time that I created that one of my hobbies, I put like a different name on it because I wanted to have like a completely different process when I worked on these. So if you notice all of these hobbies that I did, like design, it's still very similar in a way that's very rational, like goal-oriented. I was also making, I didn't show like a lot of video games and stuff. And it's always, whatever I did there, I was making apps, it's always like very goal-oriented, very rational. And with this, I just wanted to just experiment. And I choose the Formalyst name because if you're a designer and somebody calls you Formalyst, it's an insult basically, because that means that you're superficial, that you just care about style and not the substance. And I really want to embrace the superficiality and how just formal aspects of work, how just visuals without having to communicate any story in itself, how just visuals could generate meaning in some way. This early work, which I call Perfect Fit, is a good example of at least my early intentions, which is that just to make work that somewhere in between abstracts and figurative work, and this, it feels like you can understand what's going on. You can almost intuit that there's a meaning behind it, but that meaning is kind of like always keep being elusive and escapes you. And so this is also like a couple of early examples where I was using basically the same kind of visual approach to show two different moods. And all these are very experimental work. It's important to know that I was doing all this while learning how to use this tool. First Blender, then Houdini. And so again, similar approach where different kind of deformations emphasize the character. Or very early on, I started to collaborate with dancers because I also wanted to kind of like break up the movement and show the movement behind what we just see with naked eyes. So this is one of the, actually this is the first collaboration with Irina Engels, choreographer. Can we get the sound, I think, should we? Yeah. And also a big part, this is also like different ways to kind of like, I guess, approach a movement as an architect, I guess, and also different ways to, let me just, well, this is pretty much, I think by now you get the idea of this line of thinking that I have of research. And then there's always like a part of, as I said, learning was always part of it. So I think both of these things belong to what I then called tech experiment one-liners, meaning that I would be doing basically tutorials. But then when I do a tutorial, I go like, well, just let's try to make something, and then let's find one simple metaphor to just wrap up this work. And so these are like one-line joke. First, left one being called like personal growth, and this is withering glory. And you will see that these kind of tech experiments with like one-line jokes, later some of them found like a more meaningful application. About oh, very little pieces. This is one of the pieces maybe that I started with a clear idea of what I want to do and then execute. But most of the work were experimental. This is an example of really a couple of pieces that were very intentional in. Looping. Oh, wait. This is the one. So then, about that time, 2 years ago, artificial intelligence things started to catch my attention. And interestingly, I didn't start by implementing like visual AI. First time that I used AI was in a really weird way, where I use AI to tell stories. So let me explain. This is before ChatGPT was released. So I would be making these videos just by CGI. Then I would explain to AI what's happening in the video. And I asked like, well, tell me some story about this. And that was, I think, a tool called Writer. And it was interesting because it would tell a story that's vaguely connected to the visuals, but something completely else and weird. And I guess this juxtaposition between visual stories is what I found interesting at that time.
A little girl and her grandma see a pig that's too large. It is walking the golden path that goes to the horizon. The little girl asks,
Grandma, why is that pig too big?
Grandma replies,
That's not a pig. It's a balloon. The wind blew it too high and it doesn't know how to come down.
The little girl is skeptical and asks,
Where does the wind come from?
Grandma replies,
I don't know what you're talking about.
That's the story. So, and this is, I wanted to show, this is another one, and it's interesting because when at first I read the story that AI wrote based on this visual, and I said like a story about like black and white panda, like rolling around in a black and white world. I was like, wow, this is a really strange story. And then about 3 months later, I read it and I was like, well, this is actually pretty racial. And you're gonna see see it for yourself, it's pretty weird. And I'm pretty sure that right now, an AI could never, maybe like Grok, could output like controversial story like this.
The piece starts out with a black panda, who is an artist. He has a dilemma. He cannot make a creative work of art because of his black and white appearance. He decides to paint a self-portrait with paints that are both black and white. The next day, he shows up at his art teacher's office, who is a white panda. The teacher falls in love with the panda's self-portrait, but doesn't want to admit it to himself due to his color prejudice. The following day, the black panda returns to find that the white panda has torn up the self-portrait and painted it over with more paintings by white pandas. The black panda says he will never create any more artwork because of the humiliation.
Really strange story. I didn't expect that it will go that way, but yeah. And I will maybe address later why probably this will never get written by AI, this kind of work ever again. But then I started also like late 2000, 2 years ago, basically start working with visuals. And it was interesting that in a way AI diffusion models kind of work like our brains. Our brains try to recognize patterns, like we like to see face on the moon and recognize shapes where there are none. So I started experimenting by basically on the left side, sending these abstract visuals to AI and then asking AI, like, try to find the body in this. And the results were nice because there was exactly what I wanted to do. If you remember 5 slides earlier when I said I want to be somewhere between abstract and figurative. So it resulted in this series of nice experiments. And then I would also try to introduce procedural movements. So you see the workflow on the left, which is basically in Houdini, and this is, I was making a walking machine. And if you look at my Instagram, pretty much every video that I post also like the process video. So you can see the making of everything, because I really find the process itself is fun, trying to figure out something new to make. This also similar thing. Tango. Or I would be doing, so this me on the left with motion capture and then trying to incorporate like physics and see how that works and asking AI to interpret. This is actually a sketch for the short film that I'm doing right now, early this year. Or this kind of generative movement where basically I would just break up things and I was using, this is Houdini skeletons, but basically just as a rope to get this like very precise mathematic movement that, you know, even the best choreographer and dancer could not actually make. And then, you know, put some stuff on it. And then you get some results that are really weird because this kind of like, on one side, reality of a visual reality combined with like unreal precision of movement is something that you can only get with this kind of like hybrid workflows. And then example of the work. So this is a video that I did, 3 years ago, and it was like actually a mistake. I wanted to do a nice animation of many hands, and I messed up things and it came up like this. I liked it and I forgot about it, but then 2 years later, I've seen it on my Instagram. I was like, what if I make this mistake by intention, but instead of animation of hand, I take a human movement and then I do introduce the same kind of mistake. So this is again Irina and her dance, where I started to break up in Houdini and make all sort of, like basically with the glitches that I found to be fun. And then through a couple of iterations, interestingly, I made it hands again. So this is how the Idle Hands project got made, which is currently exhibited at co-working. I'm going to show one piece. And maybe another one because they're short. Here also the sound, basically I created sound samples from AI, then I mixed it into the music. And so why hands? Actually, I took opportunity to go back to hands in this project because I still feel, as you've seen from my obsession about the process, that I think creativity is somewhere between our brain and our hands, because our hands are still interface between our ideas and reality, whether we paint or whether we type prompts, is still hands. So I wanted to give some homage to hands. And then at the same time, I also created this, with Irina also, this Fragile Memories project, which is also exhibited in co-working. And so you can see the germs of my previous purely 3D research and how that applied with AI. This is another approach, meditation.
Let's begin by finding a comfortable seat, allowing your body to settle into relaxation. Close your eyes softly and take a deep breath in. As you exhale, release any tension you may be holding on to. Sink into this moment, but know it won't last.
You edge closer to confronting.
The real world is waiting, and it's not going to be pretty.
Brace yourself for
disappointment, failure, heartache. Will all come crashing back into focus soon enough. There's a whole universe out there that does not care at all about your petty human concerns. So breathe deeply while you still can.
So, thank you. I find this strangely comforting I don't know what kind of person that makes me. So let's see what we have here. Oh, this is similar. This is interesting because this is some of my examples that I also showed earlier. They were just 3D experiments. Now having like more meaning because they followed the song. This is a video for a song by Strict Young Thug and James Blake.
This morning I woke up and smelled no coffee. You wasn't making breakfast downstairs. Fell asleep, I had a night while I was lonely. I think losing your blood got me scared. This morning I woke up, thought I was dreaming. Tell me, how did I get tangled in your web? Last night was one I wish we could repeat, yeah. Had to kiss you just to make sure you was there. Sure you were there. I cannot make sure you were there. Everything I wear is to impress you. Throw it to the floor anyway. All the little ways that you bless me.
And so this was all nice, but somewhere along like at the beginning of this year, I started to get into the crisis. Not really creative crisis, but I guess creative adjacent crisis. I've started like looking at all the things online, all the creative work, and I noticed that I wasn't really impressed by anything anymore. And not only like I was seeing AI work, I was like thinking, but like everything that I was seeing, like things that I would like maybe blow my mind a year earlier, whether they made by any medium, I just become kind of like numbed about all of that. And so I guess this is something that I call commodify awesomeness, where we're not being exposed with AI because it's very easy to make a mediocre AI work. That's kind of like, okay, it's very busy, it's very impressive looking, and so this is actually a video that I made. I just asked ChatGPT, like, make me a prompt for something like awesome. I want to see like something like really like busy and exuberant, like I don't care what it is, just make me prompts, and then I basically use those prompts to make this video, just to illustrate that kind of like the state of mainstream AI outputs today, that makes us kind of like, if everything is fantastic and awesome, then nothing is anymore. And I think like talking to people, many people start to share the same opinion, and I guess we are as designers and artists, we are more attuned to this, but I think like all of our audience will become kind of like numb from this. And so I was thinking like, this is actually from one of my talks when I was a teacher. So I was explaining like how to call attention and how, you know, the visual hierarchy and how to make visual elements dominant. So one is that like the big elements will be visually dominant. You pull things apart, you know, basic stuff, pull things apart, it becomes more important, you make conscious. But this is interesting. The complexity catches attention. Like if you have like one complex element, it will automatically catch attention because brain tries to understand what's going on. But what happens like if everything is like eye-catching, then like what is going to be catching attention soon? And I at this point I was thinking like, well, you know, I maybe should be looking for another profession or something. Should I be even, doesn't make even sense to be a designer anymore. But because I'm very proactive pessimist, I was starting to think like, well, what could I do to actually like come out of this situation and try to still have something fun for me to do with it, all this. So I decided, well, obviously you need to go against the flow. So if everybody goes this way, you go that way. And so here's like, I don't have like solutions and answers, but these are like a couple of things that I learned that helped me kind of like still keep it being fun for myself. So first, be deliberate. So this is actually on the right side is like the best video that I could get out of different AI tools. This was Runway, which looks great, but it doesn't like tells anything. On the left side is like the thing that I did, you know, with Houdini and Blender and Stable Diffusion, which at least like shows that there's, if it's not like particularly good work, at least it shows that there's intention to communicate something. And I think being more deliberate will be even more important in your work. In whatever you do, as opposed to just making something that's visually impressive. Because as we concluded, everything will be visually impressive soon. Of course, then fight corporate censorship, because this kind of work you cannot make with any of the tools that are not yourself because of the censorship. And I don't have like, okay, I understand like 200 years ago or more, the censorship that come out of like religious or moral grounds. I don't share their opinions, but I can respect that, but I don't have any respect for companies who censor things just to sell us more stuff. So I think, you know, we should express wherever we can something against it, even though we cannot post it on Instagram, say. Then if you own the workflow, then you own the aesthetic. So this is, I'm going to show you just one scene from a short film that I'm doing. When I applied, well, this is collaboration with Eklo, and Irina Eklo is a great singer from Toronto. And when we applied over like a year and a half ago for a grant, my plan was to use the AI tools that still didn't exist at that time to make like a short film that's like amazingly cinematic. But then in the meantime, tools advanced so much that like everybody's making cinematic, like super cool looking videos that looks like, you know, like Wong Kar-wai and Christopher Doyle in like 5 seconds. So I was like, well, I need to do something different, right? So the good thing is that because I can control every aspect of the workflow, I can try to make kind of like, not my style, because I don't like having my style, but every project have its own thing, be its thing. So this is the aesthetic. This is just one scene.
My host, hungry ghost, I am nothing, worthless, I forgot my soul, it's all alone, fighting.
And I think interesting, oh, okay, let me just stay with the previous one for a while. The other one requires attention for myself. So I think interestingly also, like this kind of video I couldn't make in Runway because I was basically, this is again 3D that I push into Stable Diffusion, but when I wanted to pull this 3D into Runway, they told me, no nudity. And I was like, there's no nudity, there's a hole here, but no, you cannot make this. So, again, the censorship. And then another thing is like AI doesn't have no body, has no body, so I started using my own. That's myself doing something. And then this is what comes out of it, so you still have the process on the left. Strangely, with the AI, I started like more and more becoming physically present in my own work. So not just collaborating with dancers, but like moving myself, although like I'm absolutely terrible at this. I don't expect that I will learn actually anything from this experience. I don't expect to get better. But I think it's still, you know, even like with my own like clumsy movement, you can still get interesting results with the combination of all these things that I showed you. For example, this is very interesting because this is a video that I just finished 3 days ago for my friend, singer Constructa, where the funniest part of the video was because I was actually dancing and doing the choreography that we're going to see in the video.
Pali smo ljubav u to, šta bi rekao sad Sigmund Freud. Razumeš moje ono, zadovoljena s tobom. Gde je sad Marina, Tucakovića? Gde je sad ta Desanka Maksimovića? Podsjeti me šta to beše, podsjeti me šta to beše, ljubav. Šta će meni
So yeah, I'm not going to be dancer anytime soon, but it's still fun to do this thing. And so that's sort of my idea of using my own body as a creative tool culminated with this project that I finished this summer called Egomorphs, where it was a long process where a lot of things changed, but basically I want to start it by like reversing typical generative art. So generative art, like human writes the code and then computer executes code and makes art. I want to make the other way around. I want to computer to write the code and I execute the code with my body. So basically create some sort of generative choreography. And so in order to do that, so there was a lot of experiments and with, you know, ChatGPT and different kind of tools that I was creating. So this is actually the little tool that I create to sort of generate choreography based on the AI generated audio. So at first I created a lot of audio tracks, and then I used this tool to basically find the cues where to put certain commands for me to execute. And then I would basically, the idea was to record myself doing this motion capture, doing myself movements that were dictated by computer, and then made the work from that. So let's just see the tool first, one of the tools. So these are the cues. Basically, you can, it's a simple thing, you know, it analyzes the audio and finds like a good places to put the instructions, and then you can have like different, there's an algorithm to find like meaningful sequence of movements.
And stand up. Step to the right. Bend at the waist. Reach down with your left hand. Stand up straight.
And so the idea for the work was to have this
right.
music, and you could also hear the this is changing music. You can also hear the instructions, and I would be executing, but it didn't really work. It didn't really give good results. So I started to I changed it so that I still kind of like kept the music as the base, but instead of having these commands like a dog, walk left, do something, I would basically think about the space that I have in my living room and how I can interact with space and improvise to the music. So I was doing, so this is basically the different system that I made for myself of interacting with different elements in my home. And then I would be improvising to the sound, I would motion capturing that and make work like this. And so there are a couple of these, but I only want to show the last one of these interesting things that came out of my thinking about the whole situation with AI. So there was this is not a quote, this is paraphrased, but I heard in an interview with Joshua Chittarella, artist, because he said like, right now, because it's so easy to make some kind of art, like mediocre, that influencers basically become artists. So the prettiest person in class, the most charismatic person will become an artist of the future, and I was like bummed out because of that. I was talking to my wife, look at me, I'm not gonna be artist anymore. And she was like, well, you don't have to be you. She didn't say, no, you look good. She said, it doesn't have to be you. You can make your own influencer. So I was like, who could I actually make? And so I made like an AI influencer, but instead of like pretty artist, I made like a really grumpy old art critic driven by ChatGPT. And this is Mr. Clifford Davenport, given the art critic of my work, Egomorph, that you have seen.
In the utterly pathetic and laughable egomorph cesspool of artistic bankruptcy and delusion, the so-called artist pathetically wastes their time playing with mirrors and reflections, naively believing they're delving into the depths of personal identity. As the artist flails around like a clueless imbecile, the mirrors obediently vomit forth a never-ending stream of faceless nobodies, a grotesque mockery of genuine artistic expression. It's nothing but a festering heap of pretentious tripe that makes you question the very essence of artistic integrity. Watching these videos is like subjecting yourself to a torturous nightmare, leaving you wondering why you didn't just gouge out your eyeballs with a rusty spoon.
So, it hurts, but thank you. It hurts, but it's true. And actually, so I made an Instagram account, and a lot of artists started sending me work for review. So I'm actually, I don't review, I just describe work to ChatGPT, and then the review comes out of that. And so thank you for time and attention. Here's a Puppies Gone Wrong for the end. And here you can have more of my work. And also on this link, you will find a link to Mr. Clifford Davenport if you want to send your work for review. Thank you for your attention. Have fun. Let's grab a drink later. Thank you.